Hi, my name is Robyn Tanner, and I am a writer, an editor, and a rebel thought leader. And I am so excited to have a soulful conversation today.
Sunshine, good to see you again. Had to walk out to let you back in. Stuck in a storm of a relationship. Lost my fire. Oh, and I forgot about me for way too long. But it's rolled on. Now there ain't no shade around here.
Everybody, this is Pearl Chiarenza with Women's Successful Living. And as you know, we are on another episode of our Soulful Self-Care Conversations, previously known as Conversations with Pearl, but not everybody knows who Pearl is, but we can talk about a soulful conversation. And today we're going to do exactly that. I'm so excited to have our guest on. She is somebody I've been following for a really long time, and she's a huge inspiration to me. And we're not always in the same circles here in town in Tampa, but I want you to get to know her. And her name is Robyn Tanner. She is a ghostwriter and thought leader who helps people tell the truth about what they've lived, built, and survived. After 25 years in the fitness industry, she now writes about adversity, identity, and reinvention and helps others turn their hardest chapters into books, thought leadership, and stories that set people free. And you know, that's what we do on this show. If you follow us, if you're new to us, welcome. Grab a pen and paper, get a cup of coffee or tea like I like to drink, and sit back and listen and take notes, because if you've been any part of our show, you know myself, I too have been through such different adversity. And I'm so excited to have that discussion today. And I want to welcome you to the show, Robyn.
Thank you, Pearl. Thank you so much for having me. That was a great introduction, and
Oh,
I'm excited to be here today and talk to you.
yeah, I'm so excited to have a conversation with you. But I always, I told you I don't have questions, but I kind of lied a little
Yeah,
bit. I have one question I always
you
ask
did.
everybody. And that is, when we think about when we were little girls, and we have this dream about what we want to be when we grow up. And if there's men listening, I'm sure you did it too, but we're just going to talk to the women for a minute. And so as that little girl, we had this big dream. I want to be this when I grow up. I want to be that when I grow up. And so it's interesting how that dream, how it can change in our life as we become these amazing adults that we are today, but they have some similarities. And so I would love to know, what was that inner Robyn? What did she want to be, that little girl, when she grew up, and how does it correlate to you? And so I'm going to give you an example. So I always like to lead by example. And that is, for me, growing up, I wanted to be a teacher. I wanted to be an elementary school teacher. I went to school over in West Palm Beach, Florida, Forest Hill High School, go Forest Hill. But I didn't have the best guidance back then, and my parents weren't quite sure about the whole college thing. So never got to go there. I did a work program with my school. So every day in my senior year of high school, I got to go over into elementary school and teach. However, I didn't lead myself into becoming that elementary school teacher. But here I am today. I'm coaching women on how to put themselves first, how to overcome people pleasing, and understand that saying no is a complete sentence, just like yes is. And so I jokingly tell a
Absolutely.
lot of my clients, I probably would have taught you in elementary school, but I was really meant to teach you now. So tell us about
Yeah.
your little girl, Robyn. What did you want? What did she want to be when she grew up, and
Uh,
how does it compare to today?
well, this is a great question, and it's an easy one for me because I'm living it. I'm literally living it. I wanted to be a writer as a little girl. That's all I ever knew and wanted to do. And I started writing very young, and I'm full-time writer now. So I'm living my childhood dream, and that is actually one of the things that through all of my reinventions and adversity and the aftermath of it all, it took me, I'm 48 years old. So it took me from being that little girl to now and all of the things in between to live that childhood dream and actually do the thing that she was meant to do all along. So I'm living, breathing, like eating it up. Like it's awesome. It's pretty recent for me, but I'm doing it. I'm not here doing it.
I love that. And I know, like I was saying when I introduced you, I've been following you and I've been
Yeah.
watching you do it. I mean, I know, like, it's funny how all the social media, I'm not going to call out one or the other one, how
Sure.
they bring people in our world and how they come out, this whole, if you don't follow, you don't see, and things like that. And I know before the show we were talking about how I met you at an event. I think
Yeah.
it's been almost 10 years ago, and it was inspirational speaker talking about sharing your story and get your story out there. And back then you were, in the fitness world, and,
Yes.
really you came in and got us off of our feet, had us moving and everything. And
Oh,
I know
of
since
course I
then
did.
you've had adversity. So
Yeah.
Walk us through a little bit of what that's looked like for you, because what I would like, what I love too, is for our listeners and those that are watching us on YouTube. And if you are watching, follow us and do all that great stuff. But I would love for them to, many of them go through adversity. We all have something in our
Yeah.
life that we go through. And so for that, I would love for you to talk to that woman that's sitting out there right now that maybe is facing this big challenge in her life. And it's like, how do I move forward? Walk us through a little bit about what you've been through, as much as you want to
Hmm.
share, and
Sure.
how you were able to pull through some of that. What did you use in your toolbox to help you get through some of your adversity?
Oh, that's a loaded question, Pearl. Um, so first, I'm a there's no plan B. So since I was little, it's all my eggs in one basket. Like plan B is to fully execute plan A. So the first thing, and this is my way, it's not right, wrong for anybody else, but I don't believe in side hustles. I don't believe in options or something on the back burner or just in case. I believe in going all in on yourself and on your dreams. And that's my bottom line mission, is to make sure that women, people, men everywhere, they don't give up on themselves. I grew up in a family where people gave up on their dreams, gave up on their health, and they settled in the adversity. And I like to call it like your aftermath. And they got stuck there. And so for the woman that might be sitting in it right now, it's so possible to do the thing that you want. And it's funny how you said in the beginning, like no is an answer. Like I always say no doesn't need backup dancers. And the first thing is to really say no to all of the things in your life that are not aligned with who you truly are on the inside. If you don't want to do it, don't do it. There's no guilt, no shame, no obligation. The law of reciprocity doesn't exist for me in my world. I believe in what I've called the law of true exchange. And that's really, we're here to do the things that light us up out of desire, out of goodwill, out of kindness, out of it, because I like you, Pearl, and I wanted to like talk to you, not because I think I'm going to get something out of this or it's going to get me somewhere or I feel like obligated. So that would be the first thing, is to start eliminating the things from your life that you don't want to do. The Thanksgiving dinners, the networking, the social events, all of those outings, because that's the only way that you're going to start to figure out who you are, what you want, and what you're really here to do. And if you've got all of that, I call it your mud and your muck, and you're like sitting there in all of it, you don't know how to reinvent your life. You don't even know who you are. And you certainly don't know how to get up and get out of whatever happened to you and whatever story you're telling yourself. And I say this because I come from a lot of adversity. I think I'm at 13, it might be 12, but I've had 13 surgeries over the course of my life for different things. I've had two emergency surgeries where I was like dead, on death's door. I've had part of my spine removed. I have a partially dead leg, and I've been a fitness trainer for 26 plus years, which I recently, retired from that to start the ghostwriting business and writing stories and the thought leadership. But I could have a handicap sticker. I could sit on the couch and cry about it. I could have a walker. I could not be fit and active and taking care of myself. And I just chose a different story. And I chose to help other people do the same thing. And so that was a huge piece for me, is no way am I going out like this. And so that fight alone, that you can push your body past limits, that you can do I went and ran a marathon after I had part of my spine removed, and with part of it was not pretty. It was really ugly, but I did what the doctors told me I couldn't do. I've been homeless. I lived in my gym for a while. I chose that, which might sound crazy or might sound like, well, that's not true adversity, but it was the faith in what I was doing, where I could only afford to, pay one life for the other. So I chose to pay forward into my future self, who I was still creating along the way, and continue to help the people that needed me to improve their health and whatever they were going through. Because these people that came to me at my gym, which I built from the ground up from a dirt field, I did have a business partner, and who was my boyfriend at the time, and that went haywire. And so I went through a heartache, all of it all at once, but still always showing up for the person that that knew they had more for them, and the problem was never the problem. So that would be probably the next thing that I would tell you, is after you just start kind of eliminating these things from your life that you no longer want to do. And basically, you said I could say anything, is you got to have the gold balls to do it. And you have to be able to just say no. And you have to be able to say yes to yourself and to your dreams. And that little girl inside and that little boy inside, he's not wrong. Like, he's not wrong about what is meant for you. And some people think that's cheesy or woo woo or too spiritual, but I'm here because of God. I'm here because of my faith. I'm here because I believe in myself and my dreams. And I know that I'm meant to call people up and out of what happened to them. I didn't want to stay stuck there. I didn't want to stay living in my gym. And it took me 6 months to like get out of that mess financially and to rebuild my life that way, all while going through a business breakup and a heartache and all of the chronic health problems that I had going on beneath the surface. And I think that's the last piece. And then I'll take it back to you, is that a lot of the pain and the problems are underneath the surface. And I looked fine on the outside through a lot of my surgeries and through a lot of my misdiagnosis that I had, which led to the emergency surgeries. I hid the pain. We hid living in our gym. I hid the heartache and the breakup, any of the financial troubles that come with being an entrepreneur. We've all lived and breathed it. It's part of the roller coaster ride. I hid it really well. I still showed up for the people. I showed up for my future self. And it wasn't fake and it wasn't a facade, but it was just choosing, in spite of all of this, I'll keep going because I believe in myself and the dream and the mission. And being able to expose that eventually, exhale it out, I call it facing your giants, being able to finally do that by telling my clients, hey, I'm on my own here. I need help, and creating new services and new programs for them. That helped me kind of stop fighting on my own and hiding all of the problems I had underneath. So there's got to be a way where you can counseling, therapy, pastor, being in your church, your community, whatever it might be, you have to find a way to expose and face yourself in the mirror. And until you do that, you'll continue to lie to yourself about where you're at. And those are probably the three main things that I did multiple times at multiple phases of my life to really climb myself out of all of the adversity that had come for me. And now I'm using it to write stories, to help people transform, to use different perspectives and point of views instead of coaching people now, using my thought leadership, the way I think, the way I write things, the way I edit out of my life, using that to challenge them, call them out and call them up so that they think differently, so that they can have like a zoom out on their life, that they're not stuck in their story. They can rewrite it at any time. You can create a new chapter like that, like flipping a switch, and you can live your fairy tale is what I call it. But as you say, your childhood dream, you can live the thing that you came here to do, but you have to go through the reckoning. Like, the reckoning is your revival. Like, you're going to have to go through. And I think a lot of people want to stay in their story. It's comfortable, it's easy, it's familiar, it's safe. And the minute you cross the line to the other side, there's no going back. So you have to be willing to abandon everything that you used to know, love, do, be, in order to get to the other side. That's been my experience. That's how I live my life. And that's how I'm at where I'm at now. So I'm not sitting in it.
All right, so that was a lot, and so if
There's a
you're
lot.
listening, I love it. It was like I'm sitting there going, I'm like, I take notes. So if you're new to the show, like
Yeah.
I write notes because I always go back
Rewind.
to, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is such great information. And one of the things, like as a coach, and I always tell my clients, and I get the honor of coaching at a local nonprofit here. It's called the Mary Martha House, and it's for women that are in between at homelessness or leaving situations that they need at
Okay.
that safe haven. And one of the things I tell every one of the ladies, I'm like, we all have a story and we need to pay it forward. And whether you publish it or not, you need to write your story because it's a
Yes.
powerful story. And
Yes.
everybody has a story. And I love like what you're saying, like eliminating the stuff, the mud and the muck. I
Yes.
mean, I that's so powerful. And for me, like I my husband and I, Chuck and I, we tried for over 10 years to have a family. We were honored to have the ability to adopt our oldest son, Matthew, after 10 years of trying. And talk about surgeries. Like, I went through every year, like fibroid surgeries and everything. And they didn't figure out till after I had my second son through in vitro that I actually had, they're like, they would have never found out why you can have kids, Pearl, because I had endometriosis inside my ovaries. So until they took them out, I would have kept having all these surgeries. I was like, I'm done. Get these things off of me. I'm done with this surgery. And so, we were honored to adopt Matthew, and then we had Nate, a couple years later. But one of the things, like for me, I had, I grew up the generational. You got to be the mom. Mom has
Yeah,
to do everything,
absolutely.
right? You have to wear all
Hmm.
those hats. And so once the kids came along, I'm like, okay, this is what I wanted for. This is what I prayed for. So everything was tied around showing up as the mom and the wife, the
Yeah.
titles that we wear, right? Volunteer and everything. And it wasn't until when I went on a journey to lose my weight, I connected with this company, this program, and I became a health coach with them, and I loved it. And I would have clients would come, the person who ran the clinic, her clients would end up on my calendar because I would go into it and be like, okay, so tell me how your week was. And if they had that cupcake or whatever that wasn't on the plan, I would be like, well, tell me what was happening. Like, what was the emotion? And she's like, you can't talk to them about that. I'm like, I want to know the emotion behind the choice.
Right.
There's a reason why we make these choices in our lives, right? And so
Yeah.
I was doing all this for everybody else. And I started being asked, Pro, will you talk to so and so? Like, they don't need to lose weight, but you're so great about helping me understand what's between my ears. I was like, okay, sure. And I'd go out for tea because I don't drink coffee, and I'd have these tea dates. And finally, I was like, all right, God, what are you telling me? Because I keep having these things that I'm doing and I'm not making any money. So I've got to bring an income into my world. What do you want me to do with this? And it came up for life coaching. So it's like, so I went on this journey and I took this course. It was called Identity and Destiny. And at the end of 6 weeks, we had to give our I am statement. And for me, I was still stuck in the muck of the
Yeah.
titles. I was still wearing all these titles. And my friend I met in the course, Shannon, she was like, who are you? Because I don't know where you've been for 6 weeks and you aren't, what is your name? Like, you keep saying you're this person and that person. And also you keep talking about Matthew. Don't you have another son, Nate? And I was like, holy crap. Like, where have I been for 6 weeks? And it literally took me, and my son, my oldest is a senior in high school. I was like in my 40s before I started figuring out who the heck am I? Because I was all these titles. And so we dropped Matt off to college, and I did some reconnection with Nate. And I'm like, I got to figure out who I was. First of all, I hated my
Yeah.
name growing up. I was short. My maiden name was Knapp, so I was called Pearl Harbor, Pearl Bailey, Pearl Go Take an all. And I used to come home crying to change my name. And so I had to
Wow.
like engage and embrace my name and who I was. And so I went on that journey. And I realized in doing the audit of my life, I was such a people pleaser. You probably would ask me to come and help clean up your dog mess in your yard. I would be like, I'm right there, because I didn't want to tell you no, because I didn't understand that no is a complete sentence. As much as it's, you can say yes, you can say it happily as a no. And so I started this journey, like you said, like I had to get out of the muck of the mud. And
Yeah.
so
Hmm.
I started this journey and I started realizing, oh my gosh, I am showing up for everybody but myself. And so I literally remember it was before Matt went off to college. It was over that summer. I remember coming home and telling him, my husband, excuse me, we've been together almost 40 years. And I remember saying to them and my youngest son, I don't care what's happening in the house. I need to come home and start doing things for me. So I'm going in my room, and I don't know, I may take a bath, I may take a nap, I may read a book, I don't know, but unless the house is on fire, don't bother me. And that was like my first step to like taking back and trying to overcome the people pleasing. And so then fast forward, and like COVID came, and I was sitting here in the middle of my journey, figure out who I was. I was watching women like show up for everybody else in the middle of COVID. I would call it, I need a Calgon take me away moment, but I'm not allowed to leave my house. And I got my spouse and my partners here, my kids are, I love them, but I don't want to be with them 24/7. So I decided I wanted to do something. So I created this 30-day self-care challenge. And every Sunday evening, we would get together and we'd talk about what we did for the week. And I started realizing that so many women, through doing this, we wear these titles and we show up for everybody else. And so as I went on this journey, I was like, I got to stop like doing for everybody else. And so I took this 30 days with everybody. I was like, what is your joy? Like, we start talking about what brings you joy, what fills your cup. And, we talk about how the cup has to overflow for you to show up for others. And excuse me. And so I started at the end of the 30 days. Everybody's like, well, what are we going to do? And by now I was already holding retreats because I do retreats for women. We have our ninth one coming up this year. It's a pajama retreat. No makeup is required. And we were already doing the retreats. And that year we had to move it to September because of COVID. And so I was like, let's just create a membership. And so we created what we call the Shiro League. It's still around today because what I was finding is that as I went on this journey to overcome people pleasing, I started becoming stronger and saying no. Like what you're saying, if I don't want to do it, it's no. I don't have to tell you a
Yeah,
reason
not
why or
happening.
nothing. It's just like I don't want to do it. It doesn't feel good to me. It's no. Now, if I knew somebody that might do it, like I remember when I first started this journey, I've shared the story where somebody wanted me to help them with a fundraiser with animals. I'm like, I love my dogs at home, but I don't want to go fundraise for animals. So here, I know this person. So it led me to becoming a connector. So I was able to connect people together. But if it's no, it's no. And what I found, Robyn, in doing that was like I no longer had the midnight wake up worries, like going, I didn't email this person. I didn't do that. I didn't do this. And then, so I became happier. And then I started becoming empowered. I started speaking about this. I started becoming empowered to like really concentrate on life coaching instead of the health coaching, and as that happened, people were like, what's different with you, Pearl? Like I had what I call the radiant glow up. I was starting to walk into rooms like a totally different person. And, I felt different. I walked different. And then the funny thing about the whole teaching thing we were talking about at the beginning of the show is I started becoming this original person I wanted to be. I want to teach and I want to coach and empower women, especially. And so the beauty of all of that was that Shiro was developed through that. And then, as you said, like, how do I pay it forward to myself? I didn't realize that when I created this, my future self was really going to need the Shiro League in 2022. My oldest son, he unfortunately he made a choice to drink and drive on July 25th, and I got, he butt dialed us, and we took the phone call to my husband. You got to call him back. And unfortunately, he swore he was in an Uber, but he was in my car. And so unfortunately it was a single car accident. But at that Shiro League, at that moment, like the next day, I called one of the girls here locally. I'm like, Chuck's not home. He's dropping off. We had French kids here. He was dropping them off at Busch Gardens. I'm like, I can't, he doesn't even know yet. Like, and I found out it was horrible. I found out on the news. I had no knock at my door. It was just really this horrible muck that was like recreating itself in front of me as I was just living it. And she literally came over, like, I don't even know how fast she got here because she got here so quick. And I realized at that moment that what God gave me with this Shiro League during COVID was really to prepare me for what I was going to need in the next chapter of my life. And like you said, the go balls to it all, like say yes. And so today, it's going to be 3 years this July that he's passed, but you talked about it, how we can stay stuck in the muck. We can stay, sitting in all of that. And, and everybody, rightfully so, I could just be sitting in my room right now, not doing this with you, just crying my life
Yeah.
away. But the blessing was that 2 days before Matt passed, he actually was in the garage. And, we want to be these example to our kids and to the clients we work with. We want to show these great examples, but we also show our that side that's not always perfect. And so I remember Matt was here in the garage, and he was him and my husband own a business together. It's like, hey mom, you throw me this bottle of water. So I chucked the water across the garage. It's like, man, not only have you figured out your shit, but you can throw something for a change. And I just looked at him. I go, what do you mean by that? He goes, Mom, you've always done for everybody else, but I watch you, like you are showing up for you and doing these things. And it was like God was speaking those words through him to me, because 2 days later, I lost him. And as I
Yeah.
sat there, literally the day before, I was on the beach at Anna Maria Island, just having a beautiful time, watching this beautiful sunset. And I was like, wow. And so it was a day before and day after my life is now, right? But like you were saying, it's like I have to choose
Yeah.
what I want my life to be. I need to choose, do I want to stay in this grief, and yeah, my grief can be hard. Today, as a matter of fact, I was going to a network meeting, and I was having a tough morning with my grief, and I was actually driving right by the exit where he's laid the rest at, and I was like, I could have chose to go there and visit him, or go with the women that I knew I needed to be around to uplift me. And that's where I went, to be uplifted, to fill my soul. And so I like what you talked about, like, we can, we have to do the hard stuff. We have to work through that hard stuff. And it's hard sometimes. Like you were talking about God, like sometimes, you'll question like why. And one of the things I love when I coach with my clients is they'll say, but it's so hard right now. I'm like, we still have to go through it. We can't change it. I always have this belief that, he's put out this path and we got to go on this path. But sometimes we think, oh, I don't want to do it that way. I'm going to go this way. And
Oh,
it's
sure,
the wrong
sure.
way to go. And then you're right back on the path that you're putting that on. And so I love that you remind us of that, like that paying it forward to our future self and, going all into yes and the dream. And I think it's powerful, like what you're now doing is taking your story and helping others to,
Mhm.
write their story, share their story, be empowered by their story. To also know, I think in some of the things I've been watching you do is to also know that our story doesn't have to define our future either. Like it can really empower how we move forward in our life. And so I would love for you to talk about some of the stories that you want to share. Like what are some of the things that you're doing? Like some people don't know what ghostwriting is. So maybe let's start there. Like share with us what a ghostwriting is, and then what are some of the stories you're working on or have worked on that you're like, wow, I'm so glad we're doing this story.
Okay. First, let me tell you, I'm so sorry about your son. I had no idea. That's a tremendous amount of, and not to go into coach mode, but that is a reckoning that comes usually to destroy us. And I find that now I've gone through a lot of grief. I've lost, somebody extremely close to me, but never a child. And I'm a mom of two. I'm thinking of my son. He's like 14, almost 15, and I have a daughter that's almost 17. So for you to be able to, get back up and then use it for good and to still keep going. And grief lives in you now. Like I know this. I feel it with my stepmom who I lost. And we also feel it with our old identities as well, is grieving who you used to be. And even though maybe we want to get out of it, I think that's a lot of the reasons we stay in the story. So whether it's grief and it's loss, or it's a divorce, or a job loss, or a financial devastation, or an illness, right? Like there's grieving that goes on, of like a crushed dream of how you thought life was going to be, how you had it all planned out, and then we get stuck in the why or the how. And my job, I believe, that I've been given to speak out on is to not stay stuck in that story. And so, kind of transitioning into ghostwriting, and everyone's got a book in them, everybody's got a story in them, and everybody thinks they can write it too. But it's really it can be a beast of a project. One, it is a full-time job, but to make it something, what I'm doing right now with ghostwriting is, it's really like this. It's an interview process. We would sit and we would talk about, at least my ghostwriting process is, let's say you wanted to tell the story of your son and this grief and this who the Pearl you used to be and who you're becoming in those life lessons. And instead of making it a, here's part one about your story, here's part two about the life lessons and everything you learned, and then here's part three, here's how you rise up out of it. And it's a little like, just put it on the shelf with all of the others. I want this to play out like the movie of your life. I want it to be a page turner. I want you crying and laughing and cursing, and like you can't put it down. So it's really playing out. Like that's how I want to write it for my readers, for my audience, but also for my clients that trust me with telling their story in their voice. Because maybe what you see on my posts, right, like what I'm writing on Facebook or Instagram, and I'm starting my new Substack, which is going to start in July, and my new podcast, which really will be talking about rewriting your life and creating a new chapter. Those are my voices, those are my perspectives. So I would have an interview process with my clients. You tell me your story, I get your voice, your tone, your style, how you want it to play out, and then I write it. I do your homework for you, is what I like to say. And which is funny because that's what I did as a kid. I did all my friends' papers and their essays in college. And so it's cool that I get paid for it now. And then, like, let's say it's a personal legacy story, right? Or maybe you're trying to build your business and your brand and build a platform for yourself so you can go speak or you can go consult, and you need a book to tell your story or your principles or your values, whatever it might be. But I do it with edge, I do it with a voice, I do it with like a cinematic theme. And I only take on stories of adversity, of great trauma, of great like triumph and transformation, because that's my heart and soul. And like that's what now I've got a romance book. You said tell some, I've got a romance book that I'm working on. I have a screenplay that I'm writing on. My ghostwriting is confidential because a lot of them don't decide until the end. whether we're co-authors or if you want to put my name on the cover as well or mention me in the book, or it's just you are paying me to write the book, get it out for you, and then it is yours. I don't retain rights. I don't have royalties. So nothing like that. But it's really up to the client how they want to do it in the end. For example, right now I'm working on a book for a woman who was, let's say she was terminated, keeping it confidential. Let's say she was terminated, and it really 2 years prior she wanted to leave, right? So this really goes along with like she knew she wanted to have her own business, she knew she wanted to do her own consulting thing, but this was a reckoning from God that came, swooped her up after like more than a decade in a corporate world and decided, you're done, you're capped out, you reached your capacity, you don't have the gold balls to leave on your own, so I'm going to get you fired. But the way that it was done was a little bit of, without giving away the book, a little bit blindsided, a lot of betrayal. And so we're weaving in the real life story with some flashbacks and her dialogue to make it like a movie. And of course, those leadership lessons and those life lessons weaved into the heart of her story. So that's one that I'm working on right now. It's a little bit of a like psychological thriller, memoir, self-help leadership book. A screenwriting play I'm working on is about a brotherhood and a love story. So this one's pretty cool. This one, I'll be putting this one out like in August to go out and this is Pearl, to be, I would have never thought that I could dream so big, that I could do something so big. Like, I'm not a screenwriter. Who am I to do this dream? Who am I to write a movie? My entire life is played out like a movie. And this one is based on some real life, but we want to fictionalize it so that we can. And that's the other thing. And I know I'm going all over the place. There's a little bit of squirrel in me. A lot of people have a story they want to tell, but they're ashamed or they don't want to hurt people's feelings. And so they hold on to it when they know that it could be a movie, a TV series, a book, a leadership book, a self-help book, a memoir, something, or they could use it for their business and create credibility for themselves, authority for themselves, creative freedom, liberation. There's so many cathartic and transformative things that happen when you write your story and when you actually have somebody who knows how to write and is a writer, because there's something about writing a book and being a writer that are two totally different things. This one, though, to bring it back to the screenplay, is a group of friends and brothers and one woman. And she's a serial shoplifter, and she's in love with a cop, and they have come back and forth with decades of heartache and love and grief, and the brotherhood of the friends have always stayed together. And so it follows like kind of like This Is Us, the flashbacks. And then the love story, do they get together? Do they not end up together? And then kind of like the turmoil of all the ups and downs of life, but this brotherhood and this group of friends that stay true to each other and loyal to each other. But then you're also rooting for the love story. And then she's got all these hidden secrets. So those are some of the projects. I've got 7 books of my own that I'm working on, a children's book, a romance, and then most of them are memoirs and nonfiction, like personal development, because of my experience being a transformation coach and a fitness coach. But I can tell you, and I'll end with this, is, and you mentioned it a little bit earlier, the people that come with like the health issues, or they ate the cupcake and then they feel bad about it, right? And so you kind of got more into the life coaching and the mindset and the heart and the why, and tell me about the emotion. And that's what we want to feel when we're like reading something and writing. You want to be drawn in, you want to be able to like binge it, or I'm shutting the TV off. My husband has this long list of movies and TV shows to watch, and he's like, none of them will interest you. I'm like, all right, when you find one that I'll like we'll do it for research. But because I won't waste my time unless I'm emotionally involved and I can experience what's happening, which usually is the resilience in the adversity, right? It's got to be grief and heartache and love. And a lot of the times people will think you're sad or something's wrong with you. And I'm like, no, I'm just writing to express myself of what happened, or to help somebody else see the possibility in their life, because the problem is never the problem. It's not the cupcake. It's not a food issue. It's not a weight loss issue. It's not a relationship issue. It's about 10 or 12 layers deeper than that. and it's digging into that. And so I do that even as a ghostwriter. When you bring me your story, and I hope it's okay, I'm going to use the story of your son. I mean, holy cow, but there's so many parents out there that have had to bury a child and then live with that. And I can guarantee you, Pearl, there's another world or universe where there is a version of you that didn't make it out, that isn't living. And that's not what your son would want or any of our loved ones would want. And you've taken that pain and you've turned it into power or purpose or passion. And that's because you've been brave enough to tell your story and expose it, like I had said earlier. Or you'll still be sitting, you'll be eating 20 cupcakes on the couch, and you'll be sad and depressed and unhealthy and overweight and miserable and blaming the world and blaming the universe. And those are the people that are still stuck, in the mud of what happened to them. So to be able to help people share their stories and tell them now, I had to go through a bunch of stuff, and I still go through stuff, right? We're human. Life is not perfect. There's probably 10 things about to come our way, Pearl, that we better brace ourselves for, but we're equipped now. Like, we're equipped. And I think that's God and faith and the fact that we rebuilt ourselves because of what happened to us. And we're using it to, again, write your story a different way. And I mean that literally and figuratively. So
Yeah, no, it's funny you talk about the story. So one of the things that, because like you said, I could just be eating bonbons and sitting in the room.
sure,
And I remember
that's easy.
my first meeting I went to for grief coaching.
And you probably did for a while. Like, maybe not, but you probably did for a while
I
have those
did.
moments, right? And that's okay, right? Like, and people got to, it doesn't have to be a big deal. And I think we make it a big deal, right? And then we punish ourselves and sabotage ourselves and hold ourselves back. So but like, there's eventually where you're like, I'm done. Like,
Yeah.
I'm done. This, just close the chapter. It's done. It's let's, you know what, let's throw away the book and let's just start a completely new book of our life.
Yeah.
And
Uh,
yeah,
it's so true. I remember, I mean, I totally did that, all that. When Matt passed, the funeral home we were at, one of the ladies that worked there, she sat with us. We're really good friends now. Lisa and I tell each other we wish we never met, because she also lost a son, but now she works at funeral home. She
yeah,
pays for it and everything. And so we're doing things together ourselves. But one of the things you talk about a book. So Matthew, from being adopted, so Matt was mixed race, and he was the only child of color in our family and his biological family. And he really
mhm,
struggled with that because also his biological mom never wanted to really give the right info on his biological dad. We're
wow,
95% positive we figured all that out, and it's too
yeah,
bad for them that he didn't meet with Matthew. But one of the things that Matt would say as he saw me stepping into this role, like I said, he said it 2 days before, but he saw me doing this role. He saw me speaking, he saw me writing and being part of books. And he's like, Mom, we should do this book. We should do this book about raising children of different culture through adoption. And so it's funny you were saying that on July
yeah,
25th, on his 3rd year anniversary of passing, we're releasing our first collaborative book. It's funny, I'm very empathic, and Matthew is very empathic. I wanted to have, in my mind, I wanted 25 authors in this collaborative book. I wanted to have 25 families sharing their stories. And Matt was born 7/7/97. He passed
yeah,
7/25/22. And he was and I only have 7 authors in my book. So it's all about these, he's all about these numbers. So we have 7. I'm like, we're just going to do it with what we have. And so it's
yeah.
all because he wanted to pay forward to teach everybody and empower the people. So we are taking part of that story. And it's interesting, like you
I
said
love
too,
that.
like I have talked about like that next story of us, I had asked my younger son, I'm like, would you want to be part of the book? And he's like, I don't want to put, it's interesting how people think about their stories. And even I try to empower my son. He's like, I don't want to air our dirty laundry. I go, it's not dirty laundry. It's
Mhm,
challenges that we went through. Yeah,
yeah,
there's things that Matt did. He made choices for drinking. He made choices for drugs. He made these choices based on his emotions. And it's part of the story that we will share in this chapter as well. But I'm like, it's something that we can teach and empower and pay forward. But, he's
absolutely.
just not ready for it. And it's fun. I'm like, you don't have to do it. But it's so true. It's like, I make the choice. And I remember going to my first grief meeting for parents. And I remember there was a lady sitting across the table from me, and she had lost her son. And I think she also lost a grandson. And she was like, she came and she was crying and she's like, this is why I don't like to come to these meetings. And it'd been like over, I think it's been almost like 15, 20 years since they passed.
Yeah.
And I looked at her and I said, I want to thank you for being the example to remind me that my grief will never go away, but I have to choose how I'm going to live with it,
Mhm.
you know?
Mhm.
And so I choose,
Absolutely.
yeah, I wake up some days and you know what? I'm one of those people that if my heart says today's the day you're just going to hang out, be by yourself or I'm going to do that, but I'm not going to let it pull me too far deep because if I feel like it's a hurricane, somebody explained it today at the network meeting today. She goes, if it's a hurricane, that's when you have to reach out for help. So I know when my hurricane's here and I need to get help, but I know when I have to ride a wave. And that's what I do. And I love that you talk about the list of movies. So my husband's downstairs
Oh
right
yeah.
now. He has his list of movies too. And I'm like, unless it like relates to me, I just can't watch them the same
Yeah.
way. But
Yeah. Yeah.
but
Time
I
is too precious.
yeah, but I love how you explain the ghostwriting because I love like the way you talked about it too about understanding the person's story, understanding their tone,
Yeah.
and I think it's so important because there are people out there that I mean, back in the day when I had no clue about writing, I'm like, how could I ever write a book? That kind of world where versus where I am today, I probably would have been like, Robyn, I'm going to hire you to help me, share my story and tell my tone and all of that. And I think it's a beautiful thing that you're offering this mechanism for people to share their stories and I love that you're dreaming big too and like you were saying I
Thank
never thought you'd be the screenwriter and then here you
you.
are and I can't wait to see it because like I said I follow you I know we don't know each other that well but I follow you and I
Mhm.
see the things you're doing which is why I reached out to you about being on the show is because I want women to understand that we have to stop thinking small. We have to start
Yeah.
thinking big. We have to
Mhm.
stop letting our life experiences hold us back. I mean,
Yeah.
besides losing my son, I've had to divorce my parents and there's things like that, but I don't
Mhm.
let those things hold me back because I truly believe that, God has given me some greater things to do and there's still things to come. And so I need to just do what's on my heart. And then at the same time, if it doesn't feel good, I can say no. I mean, overcoming people pleasing, like that
Yeah.
was like, I was such an
Yeah.
addict with people pleasing. Like it was like a drug for me. And so to overcome that and be where I am today, I look back and I'm like, wow, like it's almost night and day. And I'm so proud of like where I've come, where she's come, and where we're at today, and what we're doing to go forward. And I love that there's people like you out there that want to help others to share their story, to inspire others, and to become great leaders or just great storytellers. And I love
Yeah.
that you're doing that. So tell everybody how they can reach out to you because I'm sure some people are going, okay, I want to talk to Robyn. How do they reach out to you? We'll put everything in the show notes as well if
Sure.
they want to get with you and learn more about how they can work with you.
Sure, absolutely. The easiest way is Instagram right now. And if you're going to drop it in the show notes, but it's writer underscore Robyn Len. So that's the easiest way is on Instagram right now. I'm on Facebook as well under Robyn Tanner. Or they can email me as well, and you can drop that in the show notes. So I'll be launching my Substack and my podcast again. I had a podcast for a while, but I shifted out of that identity. And again, I think that's one of the last things that I'll say is like you're allowed to change your mind. So saying no, I think that's for the last piece of I've never been a people pleaser. I just never been. It was never in me to be a people pleaser. But I always held on, and it because it seemed like quitting or failure. And I teach, anybody now or speak about you're allowed to change your mind. It's not quitting, but we might have to change vessels, how it looks, the path that we get there. My book, The Machete Mentality, you can go get that on Amazon as well. My book is The Machete Mentality. That's on Amazon. Like creating your own path, you can always make a way and create your own opportunities if they don't exist, or if they're not coming at you in your timeline. But I'm always obedient to God. I wasn't always before, but this I think is my 10-year anniversary of being saved. And without going into all of that, if you're convicted. And my podcast will be called The Silent Roar, which really talks about that restlessness inside and helping women that whether it's to say no, but you can change your mind. So you can outgrow a dream and you can have reached your ceiling, your capacity. And I think that's important to recognize with the soulful self-care and taking care of yourself. It's not just about saying no all the time or choosing you or being selfish. It's really giving yourself permission to change your mind, to experiment with your life. And that's how I have, like, you've seen me reinvent myself. I built a gym from nothing. I went online. I was a mindset coach, transformation coach. I've been recognized multiple times. Like, I've done the keynote speaking, and I'm still doing these things, but I keep it's climbing, and it's hitting that capacity and not being afraid to start over. And the story of Gordon Ramsay is great, and I'll wrap it up with that. Like, he would climb as hard as he could with a chef and learn, and then he would quit and start all over at the bottom with somebody else for pennies, for nothing, at ground zero. And people like to say, but you're never really starting over because you've got experience and you have all this life lessons and blah 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 blah. You're starting over because you're a new identity and you're a new person, and you have to give yourself permission for that to be ugly. I call it showing up ugly, and to look silly, and to start. So, like, when I go back to my podcast, like, I really believed in the daily fight, and I still believe it's a daily fight. But this new identity of mine in this new season of my life, it's really shifted to, like, it's all about the roar inside. It's all about this restlessness and that inner voice and that whisper, whether it's God or your conviction in what you're doing, or you shrinking yourself down and being too small, that who am I to do this, right? And so I'm glad that you have followed me, because I've really tried to expose myself publicly, that it I mean, and it's cliche to say, if anybody can do this, if I can do it, anybody, right? We've heard that a million times too. But I'm just an ordinary mom. I'm just a little girl inside. I'm still like 8 years old, like dreaming of being the New York Times bestseller, which I will, and the screenwriter, which I will. And giving yourself permission to outgrow your dreams, change your mind, and not be ashamed or apologize for it, and to let go of everything that was behind you, which I called surrendering your old self. You have to just, like, breathe that in and just exhale it out, like almost day, like grief, like every single day. You know that it lives with you. So in a nutshell, find me on Instagram. You can, I answer it. I don't believe in the robots and
Me
all of that
neither.
stuff. Like, yeah, I can't
I hate
stand
the
it when I
bots.
get a rope. Oh, I hate the bots.
The
So
minute I get a bot, I'm like, I'm out. Goodbye.
yeah,
I
yep.
love that.
Peace out. Yeah.
I love that
So
you remind everybody too about like give yourself permission. Like you have to give yourself
yeah.
permission and to
Mhm.
experience with life. I wrote that down, experience with your life
Yeah.
because you have to.
Yeah.
And like you said, there's this life before, there's this life after, and
Yeah.
and we have to we live it and we live it out loud. And when you give yourself permission, and I didn't know that about Gordon Ramsay. That's a great story. I didn't
Yeah.
know
It's a
that.
great story. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's how you, yeah.
Yeah, and so like
It's,
it's like my retreats. I'm hitting my 10-year retreat next year, so I'm really like,
yeah.
those that are listening, going, "Oh, and what is she gonna do?" I'm really evaluating like where do we go after year 10? I'm like in my mind, I'm like I want to get to 10, and like what happens after year 10? I've had people say you
Yeah.
should go out of the country. I'm like, yeah, I don't know if I want to go out of the country. That doesn't sound like me. And then
Yeah.
I've had people say you should raise the price because what you give is so much
Oh,
more.
the
But
shoulds.
I'm like, I know where I want to be at, and I'm gonna do what my heart says it should
There
be
you
at
go.
because I
Yeah.
know who I want in that
Beautiful.
room and I know who I want to empower and I want to be able to
Yeah.
touch that woman that's listening and says, I can do this and make this happen. So I'm really
Yeah.
I'm excited for what's to come for you. I'm excited to see you become that bestseller. And when you do the book and
Oh,
everything, we'll get you back on for
yes.
that as well.
I
But we're not gonna
absolutely
let Robin
will.
go yet because I did
Yeah.
tell her about our Better
Oh,
Questions,
yes.
Better Life cards. So for
I did.
those that are new to the show, my good friend Carol and her friend Diane, they create these called Better Questions, Better Life. There are over 70 cards. You can pull a card every day and meditate or whatever you want to do with it. We use them for icebreakers at the retreat sometimes too. But I'm going to shuffle and Robin's going to tell me when to stop. And we're going to read her card and have her answer. So here we go.
Okay. All right. Okay, stop.
All right. Your card says, how can I be kinder to others?
Oh, wow. Oh man, are you picking the wrong person to answer that question too? How can I be kinder to others? Now, is this an advice question where I give advice, or me personally
You
being kind to
personally,
somebody else?
you personally, yeah. Now listen, I have to tell you guys. Okay, hold on before you answer.
Loaded.
I remember sitting the first time I met you, and let me just tell you, I would. She, as a personal trainer, she wasn't gonna let you be kind to yourself because that was wimping out. I got it.
Mm,
She gonna
yeah,
push you hard. So,
yeah,
so how
yeah.
would you? How can you be kinder to others?
Wow, how to be kinder to others. Uh, I'm listen more. Listen, listen. and keep your mouth shut and try to understand. That's especially me personally being a coach and a speaker and a thought leader and a fixer and a doer and a dreamer. Like I want to energy and a trainer, right? I want to go in and fix it. And a lot of people just need space. They just need you to hold their energy and their space. And we can only do that by listening. So that's my
I
medicine
love
for myself and for everybody else. Yeah, that would be something I could hear my kids telling me, Mom, just listen, you
I
know?
that's a great example. It reminds me of my husband and I. We like I said, we've been together 38 years, and we've been married 38 years. We got over 40 years together. But one of the things too is like he's Italian, so he can be like, vroom, right through the roof all of a sudden. And me, I'm just like this little girl going, I just want you to be happy. So
Yeah.
we came up with this communication thing where like if something was on our mind, and we would go to the other and say, hey, are you open to receiving something that's on my mind right now? And we gave each
Mhm.
other permission to say that it's no, not now, but you had
Yeah.
to be ready in 24 hours. So within that
Okay.
next day, you had to be able to come back and share what's on your mind. The funny thing about that is we did become kinder to each other, but typically it allowed us time to process the feeling.
Sure. Yeah.
So then
Deal
it's
with
like,
that.
oh well, it really wasn't that big of a deal. Never mind. I figured it all out in my head, right? So it was
Yeah.
became a really great thing. And you're talking about with your kids. So growing up, the way I was brought up in the world where if my parents got in an argument, they didn't talk for like almost 2 weeks. You walked on eggshells. You came home, all of a sudden everything was fine. And so that's
Mhm.
how I grew up. And so my parents could never be grandparents to my kids. They always wanted to parent my kids. And I was like, just let them get in trouble
Um,
with you. I don't care. And so
yeah.
I remember when would talk with my kids or with discipline, they go, you sound like Papa. And it was like this trigger for me. It was like, oh
Mhm.
my gosh, like this little girl in me
Right.
got triggered. So I had to come up with something different so that it wouldn't feel triggered. And so we're big Buffalo Bills fans. So we came up with the word buffalo. So if I said
Good
something to
word.
them that
Yeah.
sounded like, grandma and papa, they would go buffalo. And then what happened was it opened up conversation to say,
Yep.
what about that made you feel like you wanted to say buffalo? So it took my that childhood thing away and just open up conversation. And so we were able to learn to be kinder to one another. So I love
Yeah.
what you said, like listen more. We have these ears for
Yeah.
a reason. So I
Hmm.
just want to thank you so much for coming on and being part of the show.
Yeah.
And
Of
we could
course.
probably talk for hours on all of these
Oh
different
yeah.
subjects. And I'm so proud of everything you're doing and how you're helping others
Thank
share their
you.
story. And for those that are listening, we'll put all the contact in show notes. Please reach out to Robyn if you're ready to share your story or just have a conversation with about how that looks like. And in the meantime, I just want to remind everybody that we come into this world. We are a rough oyster on the outside. We got some work to do, but as you do that, you're going to open up and you're going to find your inner pearl to greatness. And I hope today
Oh, I love
you're
that.
inspired to go out and find your inner pearl to greatness in writing your own story. Have a great day. Oh my gosh, that was so much fun. You guys, I've been following Robyn for a really long time. I think it's been about 10 years, and her story and her journey and watching has been so empowering. And she's been a long distance mentor for me. But I'm so happy that she was on today. And she really like wrapped it up with a bow by talking about experiment with your life. Like, what are you doing today to experiment with your life? Have you ever thought about sitting back and writing your joy list? Like, what are the 10 things that bring you joy? When I work with my clients in our Keep It Simple Shira program, that's one of the things that we touch on is how can you get back to your joy list? Because sometimes we forget what brings us joy. Sometimes we forget what that joy list looks like. And so I love helping my clients that I coach recreate that joy list, like really understanding what about that piece of joy brings you joy. Like maybe you're somebody who loves to go sit outside in the front porch swing. Why do you like to do that? What about sitting in the front porch swing makes you feel happy or feels makes you feel like you're fulfilled? And so we break that down. Then on top of that, we can have this joy list, but there's things we have to stop doing. What I call this stop doing list so that you can start showing up for your joy list. And some of those things can be like the negative self-talk, the things that we doubt ourselves on that will keep us from working on our joy list. So if you're not doing like Robyn said today, if you're not experimenting with your life, if you're not ready to start telling your story of your life and writing your own life story that you live today, I would love for you to just go ahead and comment below or follow wsliving.com and book a time with me so we can start creating your joy list because I would love to help you start living your life as a Shiro that you are, stronger, happier, empowered, radiant, and the original self. because you really can keep it simple, Shiro. Have a great day.
Why'd it take so long to leave you in the rearview mirror?